Hello everyone and welcome to this Insight series with me, Chris Fordham, for the Light Review. In this topic today, we're looking at landscapes, and on this podcast I was joined by Marcus Steffen of MS Lighting Design. Marcus runs MS Lighting Design, and we had an interesting chat about how you actually light the exterior lighting, because obviously after the Fordham conference, anyone that followed that, I mean, chucking just as much light as you want for the best effect is really for the birds now. We really need to be looking more about how we mitigate against the global calamity that is coming our way. And if we can do our little bit in lighting, that's a good thing. So sit back, relax, and on this happy sunny day, hopefully this brings some sun to your life. When looking at lighting for gardens and landscapes, just for those designers starting out, or perhaps those who are a little bit more long in the tooth, so to speak, how do you approach these? What's your sort of principles, your guiding principles when you're looking at these spaces?
All right, so a lot of what we do, so mostly we're doing residential projects. We're looking at how can we create a space which is viewable from inside, and then when you move out into it and enjoy that space during the summer, how can you tie the lighting into the whole space? Now, with that, a lot of it is about picking out features and then also trying to tie the areas which are near to the home into the internal lighting and how you get those to work together. So you kind of give that inside-outside feel. A lot of clients want things which extend out of their property. Maybe they've got big sliding doors and they want to tie it all in together so that they can use the external spaces more in the summer. So those are the two main points. The other thing that we sometimes get as well is going to be certain planning conditions around conservation. So often it's bats, and how can we look after the environment and wildlife for the external lighting.
That's quite broad. You went in broad straight away, didn't you? You dove straight in. There's so many topics there, because one thing I love about external lighting for gardens and stuff, I mean, obviously, if you've got a little patch of a stamp of a garden, like most people have in London, it's not going to be worth it. But you can really extend your space, because if you just light the inside, then it's like a box, isn't it? You don't see, but if you have this lovely garden, it makes your inside space become outside. So I really like that, and it's nice. It's a great way to really emphasize.
Well, I think what is interesting is you get a lot of people now. They're looking at extending their properties. There's obviously been a huge movement to having more glass, more openness, so you can view your external spaces, so big bifold or sliding doors at the back, lots of expanses of glass. The thing is, at night, that all turns into a black void. There's nothing to see. And what lighting does is enable you to bring that in. By lighting it externally and lighting what you see, you make it more inviting. You define those boundaries of your external space, which then stops it being this black hole, this abyss at the side of your property.
Yeah, well, that makes complete sense. I mean, I like the idea of an abyss at the bottom of my garden, or the abyss at the end of my house. It just makes it more, it's exciting, isn't it? You can step outside into the abyss, just for a bit of a laugh. But actually, quite on a serious note, it's like you mentioned bats, and I had a chat with someone the other day. In my opinion, it was, if you've got bats, you've got no light. That's what I sort of understood. And I've done calculations and stuff for people in the past where they're looking for the impossible, I think, because if there's bats, there's no light. Is that basically the way it works?
It can be like that. There's certain areas you can't light. So where there are nesting boxes or potential flight routes, those areas you really shouldn't have any light on them. So you shouldn't be uplighting into where nesting box is going to be, because it's going to prevent the bats coming out. But there is the ability to do lighting. There's a bit more nuance. There's a lot of guidelines out there which allow you to provide lighting. What I found interesting when we started doing a bit more of this, and they published new regulations a few years ago, is a lot of it is about moving towards warmer colors of light, controlling where that light is placed, not having lots of light flooding everywhere. And if you can do that, you can actually create quite a nice lighting scheme which is considerate to the blacks and is tailored for them, but still gives you some illumination outside. I think the key is, though, if you look around at existing buildings, especially if you're out in the countryside, there's about balancing wildlife with security. What we don't want is people putting big floodlights on the outside of buildings and flooding whole areas with illumination for security. With a considered lighting design, you can actually make it more secure and you can look after the wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great opportunity for lighting designers as well, isn't it? A more nuanced approach, because you wouldn't get that from a contractor. Actually, it leads me on to my second point. I mean, how often do you use guys like LG6 for external lighting? Do you refer to that when you're doing your schemes? Or, I mean, there's so much going on, isn't there? I mean, you mentioned nocturnal wildlife and the effect on its biological rhythms and things. Where do you go for your information on that? Because it seems to be also all changing as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there's guidelines from various bodies. So there's sort of bat conservation societies. They publish various different guidelines. Then you have the ILP, which has a guideline for bat conservation, and there are more out there. What we've done is we've kind of taken all of those into consideration and we merged them together when we're producing a scheme for residential houses, if we're having to look at things like bat conservation. A lot of the other items, when we're just talking about external lighting generally, we have a bit more freedom when it comes to residential properties, but it's about lighting how you move through the space and picking out those features. So, for example, if we've got a big lawn, we're not looking to floodlight it. It's not a sports field. What we want is
you'd have to be mad, wouldn't you? Who have you actually been asked for that? Has someone asked you for that?
So we have been asked in the past.
A football pitch. Football pitch.
We explained, well, I think it's people thinking they want to go out there at night and maybe play with the kids, or they've got friends and family over. But the key is actually, if you can define the boundaries, then you know that it's safe to walk across these spaces. And I don't think people really understand about, or they don't realize that just a little bit of light externally is enough. Our eyes will adjust to areas like that. And so if you've just got a little bit of illumination around it, then that will make it easy. We try to avoid any sort of floodlighting. I mean, the floodlight is the antithesis of what we're trying to use outside, I think.
Yeah, and I almost swore then. I did a piece, I don't know if you saw it, but it was on obtrusive light. And I mentioned in that piece about how I can't stand the people who get these floodlights from B&Q and then they just whack it like that.
I know exactly what you mean. And probably sort of 12, 13 years ago, I saw a little guideline and it talked about floodlighting on the external part of the building and how you point it up like this and it's lighting out across the space. It's actually even worse for security, because what you want is it pointing downwards. So you've got maximum illumination by the building and in this area. Whereas if you point it outwards, you don't have any lighting below where that floodlight is. And it's just like you're doing it wrong, even in the basics.
Yeah, I think, I mean, because you can see them from miles away. It's no joke that, I mean, you can literally see them from miles away. If you're in an elevated position, it's really annoying.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It drives nuts. And there's no need for it. I mean, we can do lighting schemes which give you better security than a security floodlight, which is more considered and integrated and concealed. You don't need them. They're not a good way of lighting, both from practical perspective and a security perspective.
Well, if only everyone thought like you. I'm sure a lot of people do, but it's just the wrong people don't think like you. The right people need to think like you, I suppose, if I got that right. Following the Roland conference, I was quite struck by something Mark Major said, and he quoted someone I didn't know. He's a US academic called Donald A. Norman, and he said, like, everything has to change now, which is quite a broad, sweeping statement, right? But he was talking about, obviously, climate change and whatnot, but we're certainly on the precipice, it seems. I mean, how does this affect your design decisions? Do you feel more constricted now, or does it suit your design style? Because you are more, I mean, what we've discussed today, you're more nuanced in your approach. So probably maybe that helps embolden your ideas rather than take away.
I think it's true. I think we as lighting designers, if you get a well-considered lighting design, you're probably going to be doing much better anyway. It's just naturally we're going to be considering where you actually need light and discussing that rather than flooding a whole space. I think definitely there's a huge amount of work to be done. I find it quite nice to have restrictions. I think good design comes out of having constraints and having to think creatively about how you're going to work within those constraints. So whether it's budget, regulations, consideration for environment, all of those things put parameters around what you design, and we as designers come up with good solutions for that. And so I actually look forward to the challenge. We've already started considering how we can build in how we can work with circular economy light fittings and things like that. And I have moved in the last few years towards considering more of how can we control the placement of light even more externally. So whereas before we might have quite a few spotlights and uplighting externally, the light onto surfaces, never little marker lights, but like actually just lighting onto surfaces.
Yeah.
Now we actually think, is there a different way of doing it? Is there a way we can control the light? Can we restrict it downwards so we're not getting that skylighting?
I mean, that's quite cool, because I didn't think anyone was thinking about that, because like there is a push and pull, isn't there? Because as designers, we like one part of us really wants it just to make it look good. We want it to look cool. I feel guilty when I do an uplighting scheme, because I know that what I want and I know what it to look like, but I know also all the ramifications of that now, more so than in the past. So part of me is sort of thinking, well, I like it, but maybe just less is more is probably the key, isn't it?
I think that's an important part to consider. And often it's about, you can come up with all these ideas, but it's stripping back to what is the essence of the design, what is essential within that, and curating it down into something which is a really considered design. And it's very easy to look at a building and go, right, oh yeah, we'll put some uplighting here, and we'll like this, and this. But then it's like, well, what is in keeping with the space? And that's what designers do. But I think what we have now is we already do this sort of thing, but now we have a way of saying, actually, this is the way we have to do it, because we can't just, you get some clients who just want to go, yeah, flood it with light. And it's like, no, we're not going to be all bling. We're going to have to do this because actually we've got the environmental considerations as well. So that's quite nice to help assist us in creating a design. And I think also it allows us to think more creatively. It's so easy to just go, oh, there's a tree here, let's uplight it. But actually now we're thinking, right, well, if I don't want to do that, what else can I do? Or if I do want to do it, don't just put a high output one in there. Either have something which is dimmable and can go right the way down, or go with a smaller fitting and consider, can I reduce the light output? I mean, a lot of what we end up doing, most of the uplighting is going to be a 1 watt LED, maybe about 100 lumen output, because even just that subtle touch on something which is dark is more than enough. And then we're dimming that. So we're really reducing the light output.
Yeah, and I think actually you're on a proper roll there. So I think we pretty much covered it as much as we can. I mean, I think you've really put that in a very concise way. So I'd like to thank you for your time today, Marcus. It's been really interesting, and
Thank you very much.
thanks very much. No, it's great to have a designer's insight, because you're at the hot end of the rod, as it were. So to everyone out there, just make sure you like and whack that subscribe button, just like that, to keep up with new content. After all, we're here for you. So see you all soon, and thanks again, Marcus, for your time today.
Thank you very much.